For context, I'm a 21-year-old female getting ready to turn 22 in just a few months. This happened literally a month ago, and it's by far one of the scariest experiences I've ever had. I live at home with my parents, and I had just graduated college and have yet to find a decent paying job, especially with the market the way it is now. This one night, my parents had gone out to meet up with a friend from college who they hadn't seen in years. I was a bit sick that night, so I didn't want to go out, so I just decided to stay home. At some point while they were gone, I'm walking down the stairs to the kitchen to fix myself some dinner. I live in an A-frame house, which, for those of you who don't know, are those houses shaped like a giant triangle, forming the shape of an A-frame. The front of the house has huge glass windows, which gives you a huge view from the inside. So when I saw two people creeping around my house outside, I nearly threw up. On top of it being dark outside, it was also raining, making it almost impossible to see them. The only reason I did see them was because of the lights out front. I quickly cussed to myself and ran back upstairs, hoping that they didn't see me. However, because of the giant windows and the lights on, our house practically lit up like a beacon, so I knew there was a huge chance they saw me. I went ahead and texted my parents that there were people wandering outside our house and that I didn't know who they were. The only problem was that they weren't responding even when I tried calling them. I was about to call 911, but right then I hear a loud crash in my house. I peek over from upstairs and see that the glass door was broken and that a huge rock had been thrown. Then I see an arm reach in and unlock the door from the inside. Two men who appeared to be in their late 20s to early 30s enter the house and start speaking Spanish. Now, I didn't know much Spanish, but I did know some, but was never fluent. I still couldn't understand, but I vaguely remember one of them saying that he saw the girl. If this is in fact what he said, then they 100% saw me on the stairs. They start ransacking the living room, taking my dad's computer and other stuff of his. Now, I would have just called the police, but I didn't want to give away my position just in case they didn't see me. I watch as they carry several of my family's stuff out of the house and into a truck I didn't see before. All of a sudden, I see one of the men glance up at me, making eye contact. I duck down, hoping he didn't see me, but it was too late as he was coming up the stairs fast. There are not many places to hide upstairs, so I chose one of the guest bedrooms and hid in the closet. All the while, I heard commotion going on in the house from the men talking to each other. They go through 2 rooms until eventually reaching the guest bedroom. At this point, I knew it wouldn't take long for them to find me, so I knew I had to do something. I remember my older brother lived here years ago and had built a small floor door in the closet. He had built it to hide his booze from my parents so they wouldn't find out. I managed to quietly get the floor door open and crawl inside where I was just barely able to fit. The men are now fully in the room and are moving clothes and hangers in the closet trying to find me. I swear to you, I tried so hard not to make any noise even though I was tearing up profusely. Thankfully, however, they didn't end up noticing the floor door and had just left the house soon after. It took about a good hour, but I managed to crawl out and call the cops. The police arrived soon after, even though they didn't investigate the house to see who might have broken in. The men who broke into my house never made it far, as police caught them just down the road robbing another home. The owners weren't home, but their dog, a gorgeous saddleback German Shepherd, suffered from several wounds. Don't worry, she did survive. If I'm not mistaken, they were sentenced to a max of 5 years, but I don't know for sure. Needless to say, we ended up getting our stuff back, and my parents went out to go get an alarm system the following week. From now on, I think I'd prefer to not be home alone.
My wife and I both live in Georgia and have lived there for 2 years. For context, my wife is on disability due to an accident at her work and was put on administrative leave. This meant that I would be the one actually working, I had a job as an engineer for a car company, so I was getting paid pretty decently. Most of the time, my wife would try and keep the house organized and did everything she could so she could fulfill her part. Though I'd sometimes tell her that she needed rest, but being the good wife she was, she insisted. While I was getting a good salary, the actual job, on the other hand, was very consuming. Sometimes I'd leave for work really late to test things out and not get home until 2 a.m. It was a hassle, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. One night our team had just got done reviewing some blueprints for a new car in the works. My shift had already been over, and I'd gotten in my car on my way home when I picked up my phone to call my wife. After a few rings, I was sent straight to voicemail, which was weird as she had always answered my calls. I thought of it as suspicious, but then it came to my mind that I was likely overthinking. She's fine. She's probably just resting. She's busy. Blah, blah, blah. I used all those simple explanations as a way to cope, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something just wasn't right. I pull into our driveway and walk up to the door when I noticed that the door was slightly open. This caught me off guard, as my wife and I always remember to lock the door, so I was surprised one of us did that. Besides, we were getting ready to have a baby, so this was the worst possible time to be doing this. Upon entering, I call out for my wife, only to get no response. I start looking in both the kitchen and living room, only to find nothing except for an empty bowl on the table. I made my way over to her room, and I found her curled up in a fetal position with her hands and mouth tied up with duct tape. She was sobbing and clearly in distress. Right then, I knew that something was wrong, and when I removed the tape, she started bawling while I was trying to ask what happened. After a few minutes of crying, she finally found the words to say that she was on a walk when a man that she had never seen before followed her into our house. She had seen him following her, but because he kept a distance, she brushed him off. Once he followed her inside, he pulled out a screwdriver and demanded her jewelry and any valuables we had. After that, he had tied her up for what we assumed was to prevent her from calling the police. Now, we obviously did right after, but she really couldn't get a good description of what he looked like, as he was wearing a black mask. The only real thing she could describe of him was that he was semi-tall and was African American. Other than that, there was nothing we nor the police could actually do. The intruder took her jewelry, my watch, and our home computer. When the police arrived at her house, they took a look around and eventually saw something they found pretty interesting. They informed me to come over to our laundry room, and when we did, the officer showed us a backpack that wasn't ours full of personal things we owned. It took a few seconds to realize that the things in the bag was actually stuff that randomly disappeared a few weeks ago that we couldn't find. Family photos disappearing, little knickknacks, more jewelry, and even a shirt of my wife's. It was all there. That's when we ultimately assumed that this wasn't the first time the guy had been in our house. We both had jobs and wouldn't be home for hours of the day, making it a perfect time for someone to break in. He must have been surprised to find my wife home, which led him to tying her up. Unfortunately, the police never really seemed to go out of their way to conduct an actual search for the person who broke in, and I don't think they ever will. Part of me wants to believe it would have been a different story if actual blood had been involved, but another part of me thinks it was just lazy detective work. As of now, that's all the information I know of, as we never heard anything from the police. My wife is back at work and is doing a lot better. We now have a dog named Luke, a huge American bully who would protect us with his life. Maybe the number of break-ins will reduce now.
"4 years ago, my girlfriend and I bought a house in the suburbs of Central Florida. It was at least 70 years old and was still in pretty good condition for a house that old. It was a nice 2-storied home in somewhat of a quiet residential area with no issues or anything like that. At first, it seemed like the perfect house to start our lives in, and that was the case for about a month or so. And that was until something happened one day that would forever break me. It was the middle of summer, and my girlfriend had gone to work while I had stayed home sick after going out to a club the other night. I didn't mind it though, as I could use the quiet, and I was trying to get over this illness as fast as possible. Anyway, my girlfriend had gone to work, leaving me to tend to the house. While I did enjoy the quiet, I knew I would miss her as she works in healthcare and would often work long hours. After she left, I rested for a good hour or so and had went downstairs to grab a snack before going back up again. Not knowing what to do, I just put on a movie to keep myself busy in hopes of falling asleep to rest more. At one point during the movie, I heard the tire screech of a car coming from outside. This was weird as there was almost no one that drives recklessly around here, so I could only assume it might have been an accident. I looked down from my bedroom window, and parked in my driveway is a white van I've never seen before. At this point, I'm shitting bricks right now as I wasn't sure who these people were or what they were doing here. Not even a minute later, I hear the frantic knocking on my front door, followed by several people yelling and screaming. I run down to the front door and look through the peephole and see these intimidating men pounding on my door. I speak into my Ring doorbell and ask them who they were and what they were doing on my property. The guy that was closest to the door responded by saying, "Don't play stupid with us. You know who we are, we want our money that you owe, and you're gonna give it to us." At this point, I'm extremely confused and terrified, and I don't want to open the door to confront them. I yell at them that I don't know who they are and to leave. However, this seemed to agitate them even more and began to pound on the door even harder. I knew it was only a matter of time before they would come in here and do God knows what to me. I took that time to call the police and explain everything. Right after I was telling the operator what was going on, I hear my window smash open and see them come in one by one. I knew they'd eventually find me, and so I did the only thing I could do. In the moment, it was risky as hell, but after gathering up the courage, I run down the stairs pleading for them to not kill me. However, instead of them reacting with anger or doing something potentially worse, they all just turned to look at each other with these confused faces. It was then where I could hear sirens from down the road, which was music to my ears. This caused them to get back in their van and flee. They didn't make it far though, as police had managed to find them about 2 blocks away. What police told me they learned shocked me to my core. Apparently, the people who had broken into my house were part of a major drug trafficking operation. One of their buyers had apparently stole $50,000 worth of cocaine and other goods and had smuggled them into their house. Whoever gave these people the address as to where this person might have lived had obviously given them the wrong address, resulting in them breaking into my house. The thought that I could have been killed that day will never leave me. I think the hardest part for me was facing these twisted people in court. I'll never forget them calling my name, walking past these criminals, giving me a look as if they wanted to kill me. My girlfriend and I tried to stay in that house to make the best of it, but it came to the point where we just couldn't. She would become paranoid, and I would often wake up from nightmares about it. It even came to a point where I started having thoughts about how other people from this gang would come back for us. This ultimately started to affect our mental health and even our jobs in a way. I'm not sure why this affected me so much, but we just couldn't live with it. A month later, we made the decision to sell the house and move over 2 states away to a safer area. I hope it stays that way.